Lucille Ball was in the middle of filming a live comedy sketch for her CBS special when the phone rang on set. It was her ex-husband Desi calling from his home in Del Mar, California. And what he was about to tell her would stop her heart and break Hollywood's heart at the same time. It was Thursday, March 18th, 1976. The Lucy Show special was broadcasting live from Studio 33 at CBS Television City, with Lucille Ball performing a sketch about a woman trying to return a broken toaster to a department store. The studio audience of 250 people was laughing at all the right moments, and 18 million viewers across America were watching their favorite redhead do what she did best, making the impossible look effortless. Lucy was in the middle of her signature physical comedy routine, wrestling with the oversized prop toaster, when something unprecedented happened. The white telephone on the department store counter set, the prop that had been part of dozens of Lucy sketches over the years, but had never actually been connected to a working phone line, suddenly started ringing with the sharp, persistent tone that cut through Lucy's perfectly timed slapstick moment. The audience fell silent. Her co-star Gary Morton, who was also her current husband, looked genuinely confused. The orchestra stopped playing. For a moment, Lucy herself seemed frozen in a way that America had never seen before. The woman who had built a 30-year career on perfect comic timing looked genuinely rattled. The white prop phone wasn't supposed to ring. It had never rung in 25 years of television. But somehow, impossibly, it was ringing during a live broadcast being watched by millions, and the person on the other end was about to change everything. The studio fell into complete silence. Lucy stared at the ringing phone like it had transformed into something alien. Gary Morton stepped back from the set, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. From behind the cameras, the show's director Bob Carroll Jr. was frantically waving his arms, trying to signal something to Lucy. But even he looked as bewildered as everyone else watching. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't rehearsed. This definitely wasn't supposed to happen during a live television broadcast. The white telephone was a prop. It had been used in countless Lucy sketches over the decades. The I Love Lucy apartment phone. The Lucy Show office phone. It was always the same joke. A phone that rang on cue, disconnected from any actual phone line, purely for comedy purposes. But technical crew members backstage were now scrambling, checking equipment, trying to understand how a dead phone line had suddenly come to life. The phone kept ringing. Lucy's hand hovered over the receiver, and for the first time in her legendary career, America watched Lucille Ball look genuinely uncertain about what to do next. She could ignore it. She could motion to cut to commercial. She could turn it into a joke and move on with the sketch. But something in that ringing sound felt urgent, felt real, felt like it demanded to be answered. Finally, Lucy made a decision that would create one of the most unforgettable moments in television history. She reached down and picked up the phone. Her famous blue eyes were wide, her comic mask completely dropped. "Hello," Lucy said, her voice carrying none of its usual performative energy. Just genuine confusion and a hint of something else. Fear, maybe. Or recognition. "Lucy," the voice came through the phone speaker, audible to the entire studio audience and every viewer watching at home. Deep, accented, unmistakably familiar. "Lucy, honey, it's me. It's Desi." Lucille Ball's face went through a series of emotions that no script could have ever captured. Shock, disbelief, recognition, and then something that looked like her heart was breaking and healing at the exact same time. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to Desi, her ex-husband of 16 years, the man she had divorced in 1960, the father of her children, the co-creator of the most successful television show in history, calling her live on national television from his home 120 miles away. Lucy's hand went to her chest, and for a moment she couldn't speak. The studio audience began murmuring, a wave of recognition spreading through the crowd like electricity. That voice, that unmistakable Cuban accent, that was Desi Arnaz, the real Desi Arnaz. Ricky Ricardo himself was on the phone with Lucy, and this wasn't a planned reunion or a publicity stunt. This was something else entirely. "Desi," Lucy finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing? How did you even get through to this phone?" Desi's warm, familiar laugh came through the speakers, and it carried something in it that made the hairs on the back of Lucy's neck stand up. Not his usual confident charm. Something deeper. Something that sounded almost like goodbye. I called CBS, Lucy. I told them it was an emergency about you, and I needed to reach you immediately. They connected me to some phone number they said would get to you on set. I didn't know it would be during a live broadcast until I heard the audience react. The studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. These weren't actors reading lines. This was Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, Hollywood's most famous divorced couple, having an unscripted conversation in front of 18 million people. Lucy looked at the cameras, then at Gary, then back at the phone in her hand. Her current husband was watching her talk to her ex-husband on live television, and the whole situation felt surreal. Impossible. Desi, you can't just call CBS and demand to be put through to my set, Lucy said, trying to regain some composure, trying to find her performer's voice again. That's not how any of this works. There are protocols. There are. Lucy, Desi interrupted gently. When have we ever followed protocols? A few people in the audience laughed nervously, recognizing the dynamic they had watched for 6 seasons on I Love Lucy. The same loving exasperation, the same impossible situations. But this wasn't a script. This was real. Lucy could have hung up. She could have signaled to cut to commercial. She could have handled this privately, off camera, the way divorced people were supposed to handle unexpected calls from their ex-spouses. Instead, she made a choice that revealed something about what Desi Arnaz still meant to her, even after 16 years apart. Okay, Lucy said quietly, sitting down on the edge of the prop department store counter, the broken toaster forgotten beside her. Since you've apparently hijacked my show in front of 18 million people, Desi, what was so important that it couldn't wait until tomorrow? What couldn't wait until you could call me at home like a normal person? What Desi Arnaz said next would make Lucille Ball cry on live television for the first time in her 40-year career. Desi's voice came through the phone speaker, and the playful tone was completely gone now, replaced by something raw and urgent that made Lucy grip the phone tighter. Lucy, I watched your special last month, the one where you did that tribute segment about the history of television comedy, and you showed clips from I Love Lucy. You talked about how we created something that changed television forever. Lucy nodded, even though this was a phone call and he couldn't see her. Desi, we've talked about the show 100 times over the years. Why are you bringing this up now? Why are you calling me during a live broadcast? Because I never told you the truth about those years, Lucy. And I realized something 2 weeks ago that made me understand I'm running out of time to tell you things I should have said 16 years ago. And I wanted America to hear this too, because they loved us together, and they deserve to know what really happened after we stopped being Lucy and Ricky. The studio audience was completely still. This wasn't going where anyone expected. Lucy's face showed confusion mixed with growing concern. Desi, what are you talking about? What truth? And then Desi Arnaz began telling Lucille Ball things she had never known, things that had been hidden for nearly 2 decades. Do you remember when your variety show was struggling in 1968? When the network was talking about cancellation, and you thought your career might be over? Lucy's eyes widened. Of course I remember. That was the worst year of my professional life. I bought advertising time, Lucy. $200,000 worth of commercial spots during your show. I created a fake company name, so you wouldn't know it was me. I kept your show on the air for another season because I couldn't stand watching you struggle. Lucy's hand went to her mouth. Her eyes were filling with tears. You did what? And when Lucy was sick in 1971, when she needed that specialist in Switzerland and the insurance company wouldn't cover it, you thought some anonymous donor paid for her treatment. That was me, Lucy. I took out a second mortgage on the Del Mar house. Our daughter needed help, and I wasn't going to let anything stop her from getting it. The tears were streaming down Lucy's face now, her famous comedic composure completely shattered. The audience sat in stunned silence, watching Lucille Ball's Heartbreak open on live television. Why didn't you tell me? Lucy whispered. Why did you hide all of this? Because you divorced me for good reasons, Lucy. I was a difficult husband. I drank too much. I let my pride get in the way of supporting your career the way I should have. You were right to leave me. But that didn't mean I stopped being your partner. That didn't mean I stopped protecting you. Desi's voice cracked slightly, and Lucy realized with a shock that he was crying too. And last year, Lucy, when you were at that charity gala, and you mentioned during your speech that you wished someone still sent you gardenias like they did in the old days? Lucy gasped audibly. Gardenias had been her favorite flower since she was 19 years old. Desi used to bring them to her dressing room every Friday during I Love Lucy. I've been sending them to your dressing room every single Friday for 16 years, Lucy. Every week since our divorce. You thought they were from CBS, from the network showing appreciation. But it was always me. It was always me trying to tell you that some things don't end just because a marriage does. Lucy was openly sobbing now, and she didn't care that 18 million people were watching. Desi, why are you telling me all of this now? Why today? The pause that followed felt like it lasted forever. When Desi finally spoke again, his voice was quieter, heavier, carrying a weight that made everyone listening understand that this conversation had suddenly become about something much bigger than hidden kindness. Because I'm 59 years old, Lucy, and I went to see my cardiologist 2 weeks ago, Dr. Morrison at Scripps Hospital in San Diego. He did tests. A lot of tests. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. The studio went so silent that the hum of the television cameras became audible. Lucy's face went pale, all the color draining from her cheeks in a way that makeup could never create. Her hands were shaking as she held the phone. "What kind of tests, Desi?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "What did he find?" "He found that my heart is failing, Lucy. Congestive heart failure, they call it. Years of drinking and smoking and living too hard finally caught up with me. He gave me medications. He gave me restrictions. And he gave me a time frame that made me realize I needed to stop hiding things from you." Lucy stood up from the department store counter, her legs unsteady, and Gary Morton moved closer to her, ready to catch her if she fell. But she waved him away, her entire focus on the voice coming through that impossible phone line. "How much time, Desi?" The question came out as barely a whisper, but it echoed through the silent studio like a scream. "Enough time to tell you that divorcing you was the biggest mistake I ever made. Enough time to tell you that loving you was the smartest thing I ever did. Enough time to tell you that every single day for 16 years, I have loved you exactly as much as I did on our wedding day in 1940. Lucille Ball, who had faced every conceivable disaster on live television with perfect comic timing, who had turned broken props and missed cues into comedy gold for 4 decades, who had built an empire on her ability to keep performing no matter what happened, finally lost her composure completely. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup, and she didn't care at all. Her shoulders shook with sobs that the microphones picked up and broadcast to every home in America. The studio audience was crying now. Camera operators were wiping their eyes with their sleeves, trying to keep their equipment steady. Gary Morton stood a few feet away, his own face wet with tears, watching his wife mourn something that had ended 16 years ago, but clearly had never really died. 18 million people across America were watching one of the most genuine, unguarded moments ever broadcast on television. "Desi," Lucy managed to say through her tears, her voice breaking on his name. "I need to tell you something too. Something I've never told anyone, not even Gary, and I'm sorry, honey." She glanced at her husband, who nodded with understanding. "I never stopped loving you either. I just didn't know how to be married to you and be Lucy Ricardo and be Lucille Ball all at the same time. I didn't know how to be your wife and America's comedian. I chose wrong, Desi. I chose my career, and I lost you, and not a single day has gone by when I didn't wonder if I made the biggest mistake of my life." Desi's voice came back, thick with emotion. "You didn't choose wrong, Lucy. You gave the world laughter. You changed television forever. You showed every woman in America that they could be funny and powerful and in charge. I was just too stupid and too proud to stand beside you while you did it. I should have been your biggest supporter, and instead I became your biggest obstacle." Lucy sat back down, her legs finally giving out. Do you remember when we created little Ricky on the show because I was pregnant in real life? When the network said we couldn't mention pregnancy on television, and you fought them for weeks until they agreed? Of course I remember, Desi said softly. You were magnificent. You were 7 months pregnant doing physical comedy, and you never missed a beat. That's who we were together, Desi. We made the impossible possible. We created something that had never existed before. We loved each other enough to change the world. There was a pause, and when Desi spoke again, his voice carried that familiar warmth that had made millions fall in love with Ricky Ricardo. I'm going to be okay for a while, Lucy. The doctors gave me medications and a plan, but I need you to promise me something. Anything, Lucy said immediately. I'm coming to see you this weekend. We're going to sit on your patio in Del Mar, and we're going to drink that terrible Cuban coffee you make, and we're going to talk about everything. Everything we did right, everything we did wrong, everything we still mean to each other. Desi's laugh came through the speakers, and it sounded lighter now, like a weight had been lifted. I'd like that more than anything in the world, honey. But right now, I think you have a show to finish. These people paid good money to see you be funny, not to watch you cry over your ex-husband who can't seem to let you go even after 16 years. Lucy laughed through her tears, and it was the most genuine sound she had made all night. Even now, Desi, even now you're still making me laugh, when I should be furious at you for hijacking my show. Lucy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek in a way that would have mortified her makeup artist, but somehow made her look more real than she had ever looked on television. She took a deep breath that 18 million people heard through their television speakers, and she turned to face the cameras directly. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucy said, her voice still thick with emotion but steady now, finding that performer's strength that had carried her through 40 years in show business. I need to apologize for what just happened. That wasn't part of tonight's show. That was my ex-husband deciding that apparently primetime television was the perfect moment to have a very private conversation in front of all of you. The audience began to applaud, but it wasn't the usual enthusiastic response to a comedy sketch. This was different, deeper, the kind of respectful, emotional applause that people give when they've witnessed something sacred, something true. But I also want to say something, Lucy continued, her eyes glistening with fresh tears. If you have someone in your life that you love, someone you used to love, someone you never stopped loving, don't wait. Don't wait for them to call you on live television to say the things that need to be said. Don't wait until someone gets sick or until it's too late. Call them tomorrow. Call them tonight. Tell them what they mean to you while you still have the chance. The episode became legendary before it even finished airing. CBS switchboards were overwhelmed with calls from viewers. Some were crying. Some were sharing their own stories of lost loves and missed chances. Some were asking for Desi's address so they could send him flowers and prayers. Letters poured into the network for weeks afterward. Stories from people who called their ex-spouses that night. From divorced parents who reconciled. From people who finally said I love you to someone they'd been holding back from for years. But the most important call Lucy received came the next morning when she phoned Desi from her home in Beverly Hills. Desi, she said when he answered, I'm still furious at you for embarrassing me on live television. Desi's laugh was warm and familiar. I know, honey. I know. But tell me you're not glad I did it. Lucy was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was soft. That was the most important conversation I've ever had on television, Desi. I just hate that we needed your heart problems to finally have it. Sometimes it takes facing the end to remember what mattered at the beginning, Lucy, Desi replied. And you mattered. You still matter. You'll always matter. Desi Arnaz lived for 10 more years after that phone call, and Lucille Ball kept her promise. Every weekend that her schedule allowed, she drove down to Del Mar and sat on Desi's patio overlooking the Pacific Ocean. They drank Cuban coffee that was always too strong. They watched old I Love Lucy episodes and laughed at jokes they had created 30 years earlier. They talked about their children, their mistakes, their triumphs, and the love that had somehow survived everything that had tried to destroy it. When Desi Arnaz passed away on December 2nd, 1986, Lucille Ball was holding his hand. She took a month off from work, the first unscheduled break she had taken in her entire 50-year career. When she returned to television, she dedicated an entire special to Desi, ending with a statement that made millions of viewers cry all over again. He taught me that making people laugh is a gift from God, but loving someone even after you can't be together anymore, that's grace. That's the real magic we created together. The white prop telephone from that March night in 1976 was never used in another sketch. Lucy had it removed from the CBS prop department and placed in her dressing room at Desi Studios, the production company she and Desi had built together. It sat on a shelf as a reminder of the night when an impossible phone call had made the impossible possible again. Years later, when interviewers asked Lucy about the most memorable moment of her legendary career, she never mentioned the chocolate factory conveyor belt or the Vitamita Vegamin commercial or any of the iconic I Love Lucy scenes that had made her famous. She always mentioned that phone call from Desi. "I spent 50 years perfecting my comedy timing," she would say with a sad smile. But Desi had the most perfect timing of all. He knew exactly when to call and remind me that some love stories don't end just because the marriage does. He knew exactly when to tell me that being loved was more important than being famous. The night Desi Arnaz called The Lucy Show live on air became more than just a memorable television moment. It became a reminder to millions of families that love doesn't follow the rules we think it should. That divorce doesn't always mean the end of caring. That sometimes the person you couldn't live with is still the person you can't imagine living without. Lucy spent her career making people laugh through pratfalls and physical comedy and perfectly timed punchlines. But that March night in 1976, Desi made them cry through the simple truth that real love, the kind that changes your life, doesn't disappear just because the circumstances change. It just waits. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough and brave enough, it calls you when you least expect it and reminds you what really matters. Today, when people talk about the most genuine moments in television history, that phone call is always mentioned. It proved that sometimes the most powerful television happens not when everything goes according to script, but when real life interrupts the performance and reminds us all that behind the costumes and the makeup and the laughter, we're all just people trying to love and be loved before time runs out. The phone call lasted less than 12 minutes, but its impact lasted forever. If this incredible story of love that survived divorce and time and pride moved you, make sure to subscribe for more true stories about the moments when real emotions created television magic. Share this video with someone whose love story never really ended, even if the marriage did. And let us know in the comments, what would you say if you could make one impossible phone call to someone you never stopped loving?